Hello, Fiona.
Hello.
Nice to meet you.
And you?
Come in, have a seat. Okay, so the first thing is to ignore the best you can, ignore the students. They're there to examine me, not really to examine you. They're there to understand the principles of how we give a first lesson. Okay, so really a big thank you for coming and sharing yourself for demonstration purposes. Any particular aches or pains or anything that bothers you on a daily basis?
Sorry, I've been having some lower back problems and I'm actually seeing a physio at the moment.
Yeah.
So anything that's going to help that I think would be good. So I'm quite an active person. So I do tennis, golf, I'm a personal trainer, I do Pilates, but I'm not able to do any of those at the moment because my back's not right.
Okay, how long has it been troubling you?
It's been about 6 weeks. So yeah, I pulled the L5 S1 joint out to the base of my spine with the muscle spasm.
Yes,
so
yes.
Although it's pulled the joint out, it's more about the muscle, and that's still quite tight.
Yes.
The joint is back in position. So,
are you in discomfort?
it's much better.
Yes.
But I'm aware that it's still tight, the muscle.
Okay, and what about everyday movements like sitting and standing and walking? Do you feel it?
That's okay now. It's just very occasional. I feel it a bit.
Yeah.
But I'm just aware that there is a tightness still there.
Okay. Let's work. So what's going to happen is I'm going to demonstrate some movement work, sitting, standing, very simple movements, sitting, standing, walking. And after a while, I'll probably have you on the table for maybe 10 minutes or so. The important thing to remember at this point is that you can't do anything wrong at all. I'm going to guide you. And if it doesn't work out well, it's my responsibility. And it's certainly not yours. And feel free at any time to ask me any questions, any confusions that pop in. Feel free at any time to say something. If something isn't comfortable, something is painful or irritating also, just let me know and we will work. Do you know anything about the technique to date?
So about, I think it's probably coming on 30 years ago, I did a one-term Alexander course at an FE college. In a group setting.
In a group, yes.
But it wasn't very successful.
Well, not too much hands-on, I would guess, in a group.
No, that's right.
Okay.
And, yeah.
So there was an introducing of probably some of Alexander's ideas.
Yes.
But not so much of the practical stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. So
Yeah.
I've kind of got an idea of what it's about.
Yes. Okay. So hopefully this will be a more practical experience.
Yes,
Great. So what's going to happen is you're going to stand and we'll probably have you looking outside at the nice greenery. We'll have you standing in front of this stool and we'll start with you having your feet a little wider apart, even more for now. Yeah. And come closer to the stool. Yeah. And as I said, I'm going to move you. I'm going to put my hands in different places on the neck, on the head, on the back, and guide you, really. And there's no right position I'm going to guide you into. It's more about the quality of the guidance rather than about any ideal position. Okay. So the first thing I would probably do is just move your head to the left and the right. Yeah, and also there's nothing for you to feel. There's nothing for you to check in on, and there's nothing for you to examine. So you're very welcome to look outside and see stuff going on. You'll see some squirrels on the fence and okay. I'm okay moving your head upwards. Mm-hmm. You can look up at the ceiling and then I'm going to move your head all the way to looking at the floor. As you can see right now, I'm the mover and you're very nicely letting me move you without doing the movement for me. That's a really important principle, that you're the allower and I'm the mover right now. You're not initiating the movement. And of course, you don't know where I'm moving you to anyway, so you can't really anticipate. I'm going to move the arms outwards, and you're going to let them fall when I let go. Yeah. Now it might become a bit more complicated, because as well as moving your head, you're going to be sitting down in a minute. But sitting down with a bit of a difference. I'm going to keep my hands guiding you in your neck and head region. And I'm going to ask you to take your hips back and bend the knees at the same time. Yes, and then you're going to reach the chair. Fine. And when you reach the chair, wait there. And I'll move you backwards. And I'm still moving your head. And there's no right shape of back, and there's certainly no right way to sit, and there's no right posture. Let me move your head again. And now I'm going to move you out of symmetry, and then back to the center, and over to the right, and back to the center. And as I said, any questions that come in, please let me know. Now I'm going to lift an arm, and I'm responsible for all the weight of your arm. And if I let go of the arm, then it would just naturally drop with gravity to wherever it drops to. What sort of exercises or sporting activities did you tend to do before?
So tennis,
Mm-hmm.
some golf, and Pilates. And do have a personal trainer.
Right. So some weights and things in the gym?
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah. I'm going to move you backwards now. And I'm going to move you forwards until you're over your heels. And now I'll take you a bit further forwards. And now I want you to stand up with your heels. And now I want you to take the hips back and bend the knees. And wait there, and stand up again. And hips back and bend the knees. And heels. And then bend the knees. And stop. And then heels. And then bend the knees again. So we're going to repeat this movement a few times. That's it. Stand up with the heels and then bend the knees again. That's it. Leaving the arms to fall. You're just leaving the arms to fall, dropping down. And then stand up with the heels. And then bend the knees again. Stop at the stool and stand up. And bend the knees. Feet into the ground, that's it. And when you take the feet into the ground, you're including the heels as well. That's it, exactly that. And then stand up with the heels. Yes, bend the knees. Heels. And bend the knees again. Heels, and bend the knees again. Are you okay with that part of your back that was a bit...
Yeah, okay.
You're not feeling anything there? Okay, good. Bend the knees. What do you sense is going on in this neck and back region when you're coming in and out of a chair? It's a trick question. It's a real trick question. Do you feel that a lot is happening in your neck as you're sitting and standing? Exactly. So that's articulating, and you don't feel very much in this area. Exactly. So that's right. So the pelvic area, the lower back is moving along with it. It's expanding when the pelvis rotates. That's it. And it flattens, doesn't it, as you go closer to the chair. It lengthens and widens itself on the way to the stool. And very little is happening in this region. You can feel that, can't you? What does it feel like not doing very much in the neck and shoulders and upper back?
Different?
It is different, isn't it? Yeah. Because normally most people do quite a lot of stuff around the neck and upper back and shoulders when they sit, stand, or do sport. It's pretty normal. And what condition do you reckon the brain is in when very little is happening in the neck and back? Hips back and bend the knees.
Maybe relaxed?
Relax, yeah. So you've understood the whole of the technique already. When your mind is very, very relaxed, your body is expansive and undisturbed in the area of the neck and spine. So you have this flow of the body, the efficiency of the body, at the same time as the mind is in a very nice relaxed condition. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And the opposite is true. If your mind gets very disturbed right now, say you're in a lot of discomfort and pain, or you're anticipating a lot of discomfort and pain, you probably know that your body would do something, tightening up or anticipating something terrible going to happen. So the mind and body are always going to be together in any condition. And Alexander called it something, I don't know if you remember from 30 years ago, when you were 6. and he called it psychophysical unity, or mind-body unity, we'd say today, that the body and the mind are inseparable parts of the same organism called self. So that was one of the main principles that he thought about back in the day. I'm going to move you forwards again. And the job of an Alexander teacher is to promote the condition where your body-mind, your psychophysical self, is in a condition of ease and relaxation, poise, flow, efficiency, and all the rest. Yeah. I'm going to take you further forwards so that you can see this has got nothing to do with getting in and out of a chair properly, but much more about the how of you getting out of a chair, the quality that you're within yourself, the quality of being while you're getting out of a chair, rather than, I have to get out of a chair with this angle and my feet like this and my arms doing this and my shoulders doing this, and there's none of that business. There's what quality is your mind-body in while you're doing this activity. So this activity could be anything. It could be you playing golf, or you playing tennis, or doing weights. It's all the same. It's not like you have to learn different things with different activities. You're learning one thing, which is being in a kind condition, whatever the activity. So now, it's the same thing. You're about to have a big deal called stand in a minute. And my job and your job together, we work together, is to enable you and support you, not disturbing this very nice, relaxed condition. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So I'll help that, I'll support that, primarily with my hands. And I'll say, okay, yes, you are going to stand. And we're not going to turn it into a big deal. So no big deal, stand up with your heels. And there's also no big deal as you take your hips back and bend the knees. And wait there, no big deal, heels. And no big deal, bend the knees. Yeah, all the way. So what you're learning, you're not learning anything about the act of sitting. You're learning through experience, the experience of being in a different condition, and that's repeated. So you could say you learn through experience rather than through information. So I haven't got very much good information to pass on, but hopefully I'll pass on a little bit of experience. You have to, in a way, receive a different experience, a contrast experience in the hands of an Alexander teacher to what might happen normally or habitually. And you can see it doesn't matter where the head is, there's no right position for the head. You can see the head can be anywhere and it'd be okay. It can be all the way there, and it can be all the way looking at the floor. And the same thing now, I'm going to move you forwards. And you can probably sense how you're not getting ready for a big deal. You're not chomping at the bit. You're not straining in the anticipation of a big deal. And I'll move you forwards. And stop. And now, yes, that's it. Still doing nothing, you stand up with the heels. And you still do nothing as you bend the knees all the way to the stool. Hold it there for a while. And stand up with the heels. Yeah. Any thoughts, comments, feedback popping in? And there's no... And silence is a perfect answer. That wasn't a trick question. Sometimes it's good enough just to have an experience without having to talk about it. In fact, often it is. And now take the hips back again, bend the knees. Yes, wait there for a while. And I'll move you backwards. And I'll move you here and here, just at the point where you could get up, and we can wait there. So stay there, I'll move you backwards again. And wait there, I'm going to move you forwards. And stop there. And wait there. And my hands are still hopefully conveying something about not having to prepare, not getting ready, not putting the brakes on, not jumping, and you can stand up with the heels. Yeah. What was the experience of standing like that? Smooth, yeah, that's another really good indication. Smooth. Smooth rather than jerky. So the jerky movement would indicate something in the mind as well, wouldn't it? What do you reckon that jerky might indicate in the mind?
A distressing mind.
A distressing mind, a jumpy mind, a mind that's a bit speedy. Yeah. Pretty much an everyday mind, really, isn't it? So the smooth quality of movement indicates a shift in mind. Alexander called it a change in thinking that he was really interested in, that change of quality of thought from jumpy, grabby thinking to a quality of allowing and ease, stillness. Today we might call it stress management or maybe even mindfulness, where we're not jumping into the future with a lot of strain and stress and pushing and pulling. Okay, same thing now. Hips back and bend the knees. Now, I'm going to use my hands on your neck and back, and then you can walk a little bit towards the window and back again. Yeah. Yes, and then all the way back to the stool. Yeah. And then feet wide-ish. Yeah. And then hips back again. What was the walk like?
Upright.
Upright. That's an interesting one. So you felt more, taller, as in more poised?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. And now I would guess that it's not because you're trying to be a good student and trying to be upright. So where do you reckon the uprightness is coming from? That is a difficult question. You need to be training here for 3 years to work that one out. So where does the uprightness come from? I'll answer that myself. The uprightness comes from you not trying. It comes from itself. It comes because that's what you're born with. It comes because that's an inherent part of your design, the upright, poised design. But when we try and do it, it actually interferes with the natural organic tallness, uprightness. And that's the secret. People think they have to do big efforts, make postural adjustments and efforts and pushes and pulls to get this upright quality that you've got right now naturally. And the truth is, it's much more simple. That when you are quiet in your mind and are not trying and not imposing a structure on yourself, this upright quality of poise comes totally of its own accord. It happens by itself. And that's your experience, that you're not trying to be tall, long. And now take the hips back again. Yes. And wait there for a while. And then stand up again. And then bend the knees again. Yes. And then heels. Great. Let's move to the table for a little while. So you can take your shoes off, and then we'll have you on here, on your back. Get into the center of the table first of all. And then come back another few inches towards me. Perfect. And I'm going to move you around on the table. That's fine. I've got the weight of your head. Perfect. So table work is really not dissimilar to the work we've been doing on the chair. It's still the same principle, which is I'm going to do all the work, and there's nothing that you're required to do. And there's nothing you're required to feel either. You don't have to feel anything, you don't have to be aware of anything. You don't have to try anything. Does that sound rather bizarre, that me, the teacher's telling you don't have to do anything? I don't know if you expected me to give you a whole load of things you had to learn and practice and achieve. I don't know. But it's some people's assumption when they come into an Alexander session that they have to be taught something correctly. So I'm going to move your legs. That's it. Did you sense what happened to the back just then?
Not quite sure.
So it got a bit flatter on the table. It seemed to drop, especially around here. And the shoulder's doing exactly what it needs to do, which is nothing. In other words, it doesn't have to be in any way different to what it is already. The same with the hips, the same with the leg. I'll take the arm, and it goes wherever it goes. I've got the weight of your head, and you're leaving me to move it wherever it wants to go. Any other questions or observations?
I'm curious as to why you're lifting the down on the side.
Around the shoulder?
Yes.
Yes. So when I lift, without doing anything, without you doing anything about it, it sort of resets itself in a way that can be a little bit more easy. It's like lifting up the head. When I'm lifting it without any imposition on doing anything at all, the body seems to have a better chance to right itself, to come off any holding patterns it might be holding on to. And the lifting gives space for that internal readjustment to happen. It's like a bit of a self-righting mechanism. It recalibrates. But not through a manipulation, but through letting something happen. Not through forcing it to happen or getting any idea about where it needs to be, but the opposite. Not having any idea about what your shoulder needs, but simply lifting it without imposing a structure, without imposing any idea that it needs to change. And if I can move it with that condition of not really caring, then the internal recalibration can happen. A bit like before, when you said you were feeling more upright. Mm-hmm. That wasn't because you imposed it on yourself. It happened almost through the back door. And it's the same thing with the rest of you. All of you right now being moved on a table, it's the same principle. When you don't impose any idea on yourself about right and wrong, when you get out of your own way, the self-righting mechanism seems to operate much, much more effectively. And the opposite is true. Say you had an idea, well, my shoulders need to be there, my head needs to be here, my back needs to be here, and I need to be at this particular shape, and I have to be upright and good and like a ballet dancer or something. That would interfere with the natural self-calibrating mechanism. So lifting, simply lifting like this, gives the system a chance of letting go of what it doesn't need to hold on to. It's the same reason I'm moving your legs in or out. And you can sense in the hips, so the hips don't really care where your legs are, because it's all the same. It's just the ability to not hold that you're experiencing, because it doesn't matter. And so when you were telling me a bit before about yourself, you were talking about some areas that you feel are tighter. Mm-hmm. So the paradoxical work in Alexander is for me to not encourage you to do anything about the area you feel tight, but actually something different. Not to really do very much about the tight area, certainly not to go in and examine it and try and release it and explore it as a problem in itself. Not at all. You're almost not ignoring it because you know that about yourself, but I'm not asking you to fix it. And that's a different attitude. I'm really saying there's no fixing. And when you are encouraged to come off the part of you that might want to fix that area, something might fix itself. Mm-hmm. Again, indirectly. So the Alexander technique isn't about going into an area and solving it, but developing a different attitude of mind and body where the body can right itself without us knowing too much about how. Does that sound a bit complicated?
It's a different approach, isn't
it? It is a different approach. There's a different principle behind it, yeah. It's not directly targeting a part that's calling out for help, but actually working with the whole system that might create the part, that might create the problem in the part, but it's the system's attitude that we're working with rather than the result of the attitude, which is the symptom. So say, for instance, at the end of a hard day of concentrating in front of a computer, you get a neck ache. I wouldn't be interested in just giving you a nice massage in your neck, but see if I can help you spend time in front of a computer without this rather overpowering concentration that then would not just ease your neck, it would ease your lower back, and it would ease your shoulders, and it would ease your jaw, and it would ease your eyes and everything. Because it's not simply about the neck. That may be just where you feel the problem. Mm-hmm. But it's not the whole story. The whole story is what's creating the problem, and can you be supported into not creating the problem. So it's the Alexander work is preventative. Prevents the problem rather than fixes it. Because obviously at the highest level we wouldn't want it to keep on coming back every day for you to need another massage tomorrow. But to see if you can learn to not create those so-called symptoms in the first place, and to maintain that quality without recreating and repeating. Okay. What's it like being in this condition, mind, body?
Relaxing.
Is it easy to be relaxed? Or is there something not easy about being in a relaxed condition?
It's probably not quite as relaxing, you know, you're being observed.
Yes, there's a good point. So,
and a camera.
Yes,
but,
that's an important point, isn't it? So the environment can also provoke a certain amount of, oh my goodness, is it okay?
Obviously, a slight feeling about unknown.
The unknown, yes. So that was actually the thought that came to my head, that actually being relaxed is a bit unknown. What's going to come in to this open space of relaxation, which is the other side of the Alexander work. And I'll just briefly share that, just briefly mention it. Even though you are much more relaxed than normal and freer, there is something within that relaxation that's a little bit exposing, which is probably why you mentioned the camera, and the students, not because that's really the main deal, because actually it's quite vulnerable. And I think sometimes in the space of relaxation, you're introduced to a vulnerable part of the self that's normally kept out of view with our usual day-to-day patterns of I'm safe, I'm okay, and I'm going to get through the day. And so you're absolutely right. In this state of relaxation, there is a certain sense of vulnerability, of exposure, not simply to the outside world, which is real, but also to something deep inside that may also be more visible and more palpable. And that's part of the Alexander healing on an emotional level. You know, we talk about the hips and the neck and the shoulders, but actually it's that exposure, not just opening up in the hip area and allowing more circulation, but there's also a quality of opening up on an emotional level, which exposes you to more aspects of your soul, of the deeper parts of you that normally may not be so noticed, so available to thought and experience. So there is an opening on all levels, psychophysical, emotional, spiritual. So it's probably premature for me to say this, but Alexander's not simply a walk in the park and you just come in and you just have this nice, easy experience. There's a process of exploration which is real, and it can include some thoughts and feelings that may not be always the most welcome, but at the same time there'll be this deep relaxation that allows those thoughts and feelings to come in and be okay and tolerable and manageable. So right now I'm going to get you off the table, and it's the same principle. I'm going to do the harder work. I'm going to ask you to, in a second, roll over onto your side, and your head, your shoulder, your elbow, your hand, your hip, knee, foot, hip will roll all together this way. The difference is I'll be supporting your head, so it won't be a particularly difficult movement. And then I'll swing you up and you'll be sitting on the side of the table here. Okay, but it's going to be quite slow. And you'll be coming this way. So you can lift up your head and you start to move onto your left. Yeah, that's it. Take the feet over the side. And the other one. That's it. That's fine. And now you can use your hands to support yourself and help yourself off the table. Yep, and hold it there for a while. And then walk towards the stool. And come and stand in front of the stool. Yep. Yeah, you'll be looking that way. Yes, now put your feet a little wider. And then take the hips back and bend the knees again. Yeah. Okay, I'll leave you there for a while and I'll sit here and you can ask me any questions, anything that's kicking in terms of awareness or query.
So what was your assessment, I guess, of how I hold myself?
Oh goodness, there's a good question. What's my assessment? So a bit like you were saying before, different philosophy, a different attitude. I have a different way of replying to that idea of assessment. I don't assess you. I just work with you. Because my understanding is that you're fine. And I don't pigeonhole you into assessments and labels of what I might discover and not discover. Because we're just working with what's happening. And I don't need to point a finger at you and say, oh, this isn't quite right and this isn't symmetrical and all the rest of it, because that would make you, well, what would that do to you if I just assessed you? You tell me what that would do for you if I just assessed this and assessed this. How would you feel if I was saying, I'm not very...
feel that something was wrong.
Correct. And what would that do to your mind and body if you felt that I was pointing out something that was wrong?
It could decrease my confidence in my body.
It would decrease your confidence in your body and mind, yes. And what would a decrease or diminishing of your confidence in yourself evoke? It would make you more tense. Perfect. So that's why I don't do assessment, because assessment is the problem and not the solution. That actually, that's not my role. Other people, you can go to doctors and you can do MRI scans and they'll do all the assessments necessary, but they're not Alexander teachers. Alexander teachers don't do it, some don't do. I don't do assessments. What I do with you is to provoke an attitude of safety, and you're okay. And you're not bits and pieces, and you are not your hip, and you're not your pain, and you're not your discomfort. You're okay. You are not a whole load of symptoms to be diagnosed. You're not a load of defects to be pointed out. You're not a load of defects to be pointed out, because that just evokes a sense of I'm not okay, I'm anxious about all these things that are being pointed out. And that's really important. You're not those things. You're not a load of defects to be pointed out. So my role is actually to give you an experience where you don't feel that you have to be assessed, but you have a different approach, that you're affirmed rather than assessed, that you're acknowledged rather than finger pointed. And that's the way that you end up with more freedom and more poise and more lightness and more relaxation. And pointing out the defects creates the opposite. So the Alexander attitude is actually a way of getting out of that very familiar place of tell me my defects and I'll sort them out. But actually the opposite. I'm not here to fix you because you'll fix yourself under the right conditions.
So would you give me things to go away and practice or think about?
Yeah, that's another brilliant question. So the attitude, the answer to whether I should give you something to go away and practice would be in a way a similar sort of question. And the question is, if I say you've got to go away and practice, what part of you would be doing the practicing?
My mind.
Your mind trying to practice to get better.
I'm probably feeling guilty.
And feeling guilty if you didn't. You've got it. You see, you're already a student. Yeah. You would go away trying to practice because you don't feel good enough, you feel a bit diminished, you don't feel that you're okay the way you are, and you have to make things better and you'll have to try. The trying mind, your trying mind, would do all of that, go away and try and do what the teachers told you to do. Go away and do your exercises, and you'll be very diligent. I'm sure you are, very diligent, and you'll go away and practice. And please me when you come back and say, Anthony, I've done all your exercises. I've done all your exercises. And I'll say, well, tell me, do you understand how you're looking after yourself while you tell me how you're doing all the exercises? And you'll say, oh gosh, yes, I'm doing it with a lot of tension. I'm even talking with a lot of tension, trying to please you. And I would say there's no exercise to do.
So what would you say at the end of a session?
Yes.
What would you say?
I'd say forget everything I've said. It's probably a load of rubbish. And going for a nice walk in the park will do you a lot more good than going away trying to do good exercises that you think I think are good for you. And gradually, as a result of this experience, this rather new experience of you don't have to try, you don't have to make an effort, that you're not bad, full of defects that you have to correct, that essential attitude that you're experiencing repeatedly in an Alexander lesson starts to become embodied. And that will animate you outside of the lessons, because you're not learning facts and figures, you're not learning information about your anatomy, you're not learning a few exercises, which you can learn in a book. What are you learning in Alexander? What you're learning in Alexander is a new experience. You're having a new experience. That's the learning. Learning in Alexander isn't the learning of content, of something. The learning in Alexander is having a new experience of relaxation and ease, and I'm okay. And when I'm okay and not pushing and pulling and not striving to be better, I seem to correct myself automatically and organically, indirectly. So there's no X, Y, and Z that I'm going to give you. Quite the opposite. I'll say, yeah, I know you want to go off and practice and keep it and do better and strive for perfection. I know all of that. That's the normal mind. And I'm going to sort of disrupt that normal mind and stay consistent and say, I've got nothing to give you when you leave here. Which is a bit of a shock, isn't it? So when I say that, what's it evoke in you? And I just say all of those rather bizarre things. If you're really honest with that.
A couple of things come to mind. I think that the trust element is really important. So with Alexander, I'm not sure if you call yourself a teacher.
Yes, teacher.
Then you have to have that trust.
Yes.
While we've been doing this, I've been letting you move me and do whatever.
You have been, very much so.
That's really important.
Yes.
So I think if people go to Alexander, they have to find someone that they really trust and willing.
That's right. That's 100% right. If you don't feel safe and trusting, there's no way you'd let a person move you and support you, and there's no way you'd let yourself self-correct, because this isn't just about you trusting me, although thank you for saying you felt safe and trusting, but it goes even deeper than that, because actually what you're experiencing when you trust me is actually trusting yourself. Mm-hmm. That's the key.
And I think that's something when you had an injury, you lose trust in yourself.
Correct, spot on. What happens when you get an injury? You start to lose trust in your own organic self, and you compensate and you get cautious and careful and, oh my goodness, I'm going to hurt myself, right? That's the absence of trust, which creates more of the problem. And so do you see the paradoxical way of working in this Alexander technique is that I want to help you neutralize some of that rather toxic, overly cautious compensation, which is very normal when you're in pain and you've had an injury. Of course you don't want to repeat it, so we get normally very careful and we lose trust in ourselves. And our job is for you to recover that trust, initially through the trusting here in this moment, and that embodies itself so that you become more able to trust yourself. And then when you trust yourself, all of these compensations and cautions diminish. And what happens then to your circulation and to the areas that are hurting? What happens then?
Yes,
they heal themselves. Because there's no compensatory stress on them. Right, so the whole of the enterprise of Alexander is getting your system to heal itself rather than Anthony being the healer, which clearly I'm not. I'm just the groundwork. But the healing is you. If you cut yourself, it heals. When we have a stomach upset, it usually sorts itself out. And it's the same with everything. If we give it a chance and come off the fear, the terror, the anticipation of all the terrible things that might happen, both physically and mentally and emotionally, that's when things can start to heal on all levels, physiological, emotional, and so on. So I think you've understood something very, very deeply. You're clearly very open to these ways of thinking. It doesn't sound like it's a total revelation, but you understand something about the wisdom of the human organism that is either acting from fear and anxiety and terror and history and trauma, or whether there's a new experience based on trust and safety and self-healing. And that's where we go. Good. Well, thank you very, very much for engaging and letting me demonstrate something to the students, and I really appreciate your volunteering yourself. Thanks so much.
Very interesting.
Good. All the best. Take care.